The following program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of Frankly Speaking. I'm your host today, Frank Sabaric, and in the famous words of that great game show host, Steve Harvey, we got another good one for you, ladies and gentlemen. Today we have, getting back to the election, the midterm election. It might be the most important in our lifetimes, I think anyway, and so needless to say, the U.S. rep race in District 2, which covers the community of Nashua, is really getting, it's really rounding out with a lot of great candidates and a lot of great dialogue coming from the candidates. And we have one today. We have Dean Poirier. And you're from Concord.
Yes, sir. Originally born and raised.
Okay, and you'll be running as a candidate. Dean, how you doing today?
I'm well, thank you.
Okay, so needless to say, I got about a dozen or so questions I'm going to bounce off you. Okay. But before we get into the nuts and bolts of all that, why don't you tell my TV audience a little bit about yourself and why exactly are you running for U.S. Congress to be a U.S. representative in New Hampshire's 2nd District?
Okay. It actually goes all the way back for me. My why comes from a lot of my travels and a lot of stuff I've seen. I grew up here in New Hampshire. I was born in Concord Hospital. I was born and raised in New Hampshire. Actually in District 2 my whole life. I've lived in one town or another here. And then when I got an opportunity to travel as a teenager, my father was a circus performer, and at the time he was with Ringling Brothers, Larry Allen Dean, one of the most accomplished lion trainers in the world. And he had asked me to travel with him, and so I took that opportunity. Now, that was before I actually went to the military. I think I was 17 years old when I left. And we traveled to Japan, where I had an opportunity to travel up and down Japan. Now, why that is important, and part of my why, is because when I met people there, because I never went out with other Americans, I always wanted to go on my own to meet people, to be a good representative of America, because we had all heard that ugly American tale, how when we travel, we're seen that way. So I was very conscious of that. So when I was traveling, I really got to meet people, and the respect and love that they have for our country was stronger than I had heard from almost anyone in our country. And it was just so inspiring. It made me feel proud to be an American while talking to other people about America. Flash forward, I got done that tour, left, went back home, was home probably 6 months, and that trip had given me such passion for the country at that point, and a desire to serve. Because in my family, my grandfather at that point had been the only one to serve. He was in the Korean War and World War II in the Navy. And when I came back, I decided that I wanted to serve. I wanted to keep that legacy going. I thought it was very important. So I joined the National Guard. We had a trucking unit right in my area. So I joined the National Guard. I was in there for 2 years, and then there was actually a break in my service. Oddly enough, a little bit different than the average military service. I was at drill, and my captain called me into the office. He had literally had a phone call in his hand from my father overseas. And I had no idea how he possibly could have reached me there. I get on the phone. He's like, "How you doing?" I'm like, "I'm doing okay." And the conversation was, "Do you want to come back to work for me?" And I asked my commander, didn't expect it to happen, and he actually released me from service, put my service on hold so that I could travel, saying that it would make me a better American and a better service member for that travel.
Wow.
And I'll be honest with you, that was one of the first times I believed God stepped in and really made a decision for me, because that decision changed my life forever. Because the next trip I went on was Europe. And I had an opportunity, and I'll flash forward past a bunch of it, but I had an opportunity to be there when the wall came down. When the Berlin Wall I was sitting on the floor with my grandfather when Reagan said, tear that wall down. And then I was standing there when they opened the gates. The big picture, the main picture you see of the Brandenburg Gates now, when they opened it, I was actually about 150 feet over that photographer's left shoulder. I've got a picture just like that I took myself. I've got a chunk of the wall about the size of my fist that I personally took out of that wall with a sledgehammer, of about 100 people that were taking turns with a sledgehammer just going after the wall. And at that moment, and this is why this is important, while we were doing that, I had seen these two Omas, which is German for grandmas, who were in what looked like almost nightshirt type things, but they were standing around watching everything go on. So I went over and I spoke to them. Both of them had very poor English, but they explained to me that why they were there is because they still had family on the other side of that wall, and there was such a historic moment. They wanted to see what was going on, because there were a lot of people protesting, a lot of people going down there to the wall. So when I actually broke a piece off the wall, I actually broke that piece, and these two ladies each have a piece of that wall. So I have a piece in my house of the Berlin Wall that is still directly connected to two families from over there, because I gave them that piece, and that was one of the things when I traveled that. And I was all over Europe. I was in 11 different countries, and everywhere I went, even Monte Carlo. I was in Monte Carlo for 5 weeks, and you would think in Monte Carlo, it's all rich people, it's extravagant. And as soon as I spoke, everyone wanted to talk about America. I wanted to ask questions. I'm in foreign countries. I'm from New Hampshire. You don't travel much normally. So I'm trying to ask questions about their country, and all they want to do is talk about America, because they just loved America so much. And when I came back from that trip, I only lasted about 6 months again, and we knew Desert Shield was going. We knew Desert Storm was coming. And I had developed such a strong passion for serving from meeting all those people that love this country. I couldn't see not serving when other people in other places love this so much. I had to do my part. So when Desert Storm was about to kick off, I went active duty, thinking I was going to go. As it turns out, they changed the force structure and sent National Guard units, so I ended up spending my time in Louisiana training people to go. Then from there, I went to Germany. I was proud to provide Promise, which was a fantastic mission that we did into Bosnia, the airdrops. And that was another important one there, because I had the Command Sergeant Major of the Army, at the time was Kidd, Command Sergeant Major Kidd, came on the base one day. Now, I'm an honest speaker, so my captain pretty much made me leave the area every time camera crews would come, because they didn't want me answering questions honestly. That's just the way it goes. You got people that represent their point of view. So I left when the Sergeant Major showed up. And then they came and got me, and as it turns out, I was one of the reasons he was there. He gave me his coin and a personal card signed, his business card signed, and when he took me aside to talk to me, he told me that he saw the work I was doing and appreciated how far above my level I was working, because I had taken on a position working with multiple different nationalities in the back areas called the load area. We had to load the food and supplies and all that. So I had translators working with me, and had multiple different cultures, and we just got the job done. And to find out that you got the job done, you're doing what it takes to help, got all the way up to that high, it made me feel really good about my service. And it just kind of injected an extra level of, okay, this is working, I can make a difference.
Okay, let's fast forward to how you became interested in putting your name in as a congressman, and how you feel you can do a better job than, let's say, any Kuster or anybody who's in there, or most of the people who are in there now.
Yeah. Well, when I got out of service, I actually got put out of service with my knee. I got my knee kind of destroyed in service. I got put out because of that. And then I did the community stuff. I coached over 30 seasons of baseball, basketball, football. And that's actually a big reason I'm in, because all those young people I coached, the country is changing in such a way that a lot of those young people aren't going to have the beautiful country to grow up in that I did. And I can't accept that. And it was, the combination of all the travel, the people I met, the young people that I mentored and coached. And then as my disability took my ability to work in the construction fields and stuff away, I started re-educating myself and, went and got a degree at Hesser College, and then switched my graphic designs to political science and psychology. As 2015 rolled around, my son was headed off to college. So I decided that I wanted to at that time I had been disabled and unable to work for a long time. I'd been rehabilitating and learning. Every day I'd go online and I'd do everything I could to research and learn. Well, then when I wanted to get involved, it was really tough 5 years ago to get involved in New Hampshire. So I decided, my son asked me to go over to California to kind of support him and watch him play football. So when I got over there, there was no one running for office on the Republican side that I could find. And the reason I found that out is because on my drive over, the VA screwed up my pay and made me homeless. They basically dropped my pay to zero from the 100% I was supposed to have. And it took 4 months to get that straightened out. So I was homeless on the streets of California when I first showed up there. 2 months into that 4 months I was homeless, I couldn't find a conservative rep to talk to about getting my VA stuff handled. So I decided that I'm not going to let the largest county in America go unrepresented by conservative views. So I started a run for Congress over there. I actually started walking around to all the businesses and talking to people. And flash forward about 9 months, I had the main party's candidate coming to me. I was 1 day away from signing the actual last paper you had to sign, which is kind of why they came to me when they did, and pointed out that he didn't ask me to step aside, but understanding the way things work, he offered me a position as a veterans advisor. As that, I helped him increase the veteran vote by 70% in that cycle. Unfortunately, we didn't win. I mean, we were going against Pete Aguilar, which is, other than Nancy Pelosi, is the biggest moneymaker that they have in the party. So we did so well that he actually offered me a position to be a delegate to the convention in California. And that's where I got the connections and when I went and I was talking to the people that had been involved a long time and are involved now, I found out that I did understand the process. I did understand the issues. I did have valid points that other people of serious position wanted to listen to. So it validated what I believed in myself. So when my son graduated, I knew darn well I was going to come back to New Hampshire and I was going to get involved and I was going to do what I can to save this country. I came back and I had looked at running at either a state or a federal position. I went through the process to see which would be best, spoke with the party, and it was recommended that I take a look at the Congressional ticket, at least to see what that was. So I'm someone that's willing to fight for what's right, always have been. That's the one thing that consistently people would agree on about me, is I'm willing to fight. And as you can already tell, I can talk. And so therefore, I believe God gave me these skills for a reason. And when I even think about not running, I see the eyes of those kids that I supported and think of them not getting the opportunities. And now it's changed even more. Now they're going after our First Amendment rights, our Second Amendment rights. They are now, the Democrats are trying to tear things down in such a speed that I could not in good conscience step away and not make a run for it, because we need someone that's willing to fight. We don't need more people that want careers. We don't want more positions, people that want further positions later on. We don't want, even if you're looking at getting a leadership position, we don't want that. We want someone who's going to go there and fight for their constituents. And if you're going to be willing to fight for your constituents, you're probably going to rub your own party the wrong way sometimes too. Now, I have no problem with that because I represent the American people. So therefore, going there with the willingness to fight, if you look at my website, Dean Poirier, 4, Congress.com, it even says, first line, right in the header, 4 and done. I'm doing 4 terms and then I'm coming home to New Hampshire. If I've done such a good job that the people still want me to represent them, then I'll run for office back here in New Hampshire, because I believe that we need to do what the founders set it up. We need to go in, do our terms in Congress, and come home. It wasn't supposed to be lawyers and all the ultra educated. It was supposed to be the common man, the barkeep, the bar owner, the barber. That's who was supposed to be in Congress. 2 years, closest to the people. That's why they're elected every 2 years, so that people can get rid of them. So we've made a little bit of a mistake, I think, in creating a culture where we believed for a lot of years that it's them that get to run us.
But you're not familiar with any congressmen, U.S. congressmen, that ever made, you're not the first one to make a term limit pledge.
Correct.
Like this. So have you seen any that are successful? It hasn't been successful. I mean, people like, Pelosi or maybe even Ann Kuster will say, if you really don't like the thing, just vote them out. Simply vote them out. But the thing is, Pelosi and Ann Kuster probably have like a couple $1 million in their war chest.
Correct.
And it's nearly impossible with all the advertising they can do to...
Correct. And that is the big problem. You mentioned the war chest. I just recently looked at Annie Kuster's stuff. She consistently $3.3 million from the same groups and the same numbers. So that pretty much tells you it's the same people getting her elected all the time. And it's not surprising. I mean, that's another type of person we don't need. It's political power. She is New Hampshire's version of Nancy Pelosi.
Yeah.
I mean, she's from a political family. She has been in the system since the day she was old enough to be in the system, because her parents were involved. And if you look at her history and what she's done on her bio, if you know anything about political power in our system, you can look at her bio and go, because of her family, because of her family, because of her family. It's not hard to see that stuff. You know, and I think the American people have finally woken up to the fact that they're tired of these people that want careers in politics, because now we see that it's not they want careers in service. They want to be in a position above us where they can do what they want and dictate to us. And that's why I have on my cards, service, not self-interest. Because the biggest thing we should be looking at is serving our constituents, not our own self-interest.
Let me sidetrack you just for a second here. When Annie Kuster, and now in the past couple of weeks, I heard somewhere, well, it is official, because I know for a fact, there's a Chinese immigrant, a female, she's like in her late 50s. She's, I guess, was a law professor in China, ran for the U.S. Senate as a libertarian in Colorado, was unsuccessful, and now her family moved to Ware, New Hampshire, just north of Goffstown. But long story short, you'll have a female in your Republican primary, and there's always been a thing that when it's men against a woman, that the male candidates are expected to run like gentlemen, behave like gentlemen, or else they'll get yanked. And yet, if you look at like Donald Trump's, election of 2016, Hillary Clinton, it's questionable if Donald Trump acted like a gentleman, but he did enough to win. Well, also, you could say that Hillary Clinton doesn't always act like a lady.
And I think that's the key point right there. Now, it's funny you mentioned gentlemen. In my travels, I guess I picked up a little Southern accent. I've had people actually ask me if I'm from the South because of my manners, because I'm someone, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am. I mean, I get young women saying, I'm not ma'am, I'm too young for that. So I do believe in being a gentleman, but I also believe in being honest, and you're going to respect my position. Just because you're a woman doesn't mean you can respect me less. So therefore, I believe in being respectful. Now, if someone openly disrespects me or misrepresents my position, I'm going to defend it vehemently. And if they go down the road of being dirty or they try and do something dishonest, well, I'm going to politely as I can point out the flaws they have and why it is that they shouldn't be the one representing. I don't think there's a need to be impolite, but I don't think it's impolite to tell truths. And sometimes the media, if you tell a truth, they're saying you're being rude. Now, I agree. The Hillary and Donald Trump thing, that got out of control from both sides.
Yeah.
Now, that's just personalities too, because that's a New Yorker. Anyone who's traveled around, I spent time in New York. You're going to get that face-to-face from a New Yorker a lot more. Now, am I going to say that if I'm in the middle of a hour-long conversation with someone on the radio and we're going into 45 minutes of why Annie Kuster is wrong for us, maybe something about what she's got might spur me to give a nickname or something like that because she's connected to something. But that would be something, it would be done not in a disrespectful way. There's different ways of doing that. And I certainly wouldn't do that to someone's face.
Yeah.
Because at the same time, if someone has a nickname for me because I'm military and, whatever, or, old, Colonel Sanders looking, okay, that's funny. But to say it to my face in a debate as a negative, well, that's wrong. So I think politeness goes both ways, and so does honesty.
Yeah. One thing I noticed, I don't know. I'm not sure if it was a thing for Mike Pence. I guess Mike Pence came a month or two ago to Manchester. I don't know if he was stumping as an early thing for if he's planning to run in 2024.
No, that was actually a Save Our Jobs. He was with that group going around about saving our jobs.
Okay.
And he was actually speaking on behalf of another group. He wasn't actually speaking, wasn't stumping for himself. It was actually a group he was representing.
I don't know if Channel 9 had you down. I know they mentioned Dean Poirier, but I don't know if they identified you as a candidate for Congress.
They didn't, unfortunately.
But they asked you, I guess, do you think that Mike Pence would be a good, could beat Donald Trump in the 2024 election? The thing I'm looking at, not only, that incident, although that had nothing to do with it because they didn't promote you as a candidate. I noticed that some candidates that Channel 9 and the Boston channels promote, they give them 2 or 3 minutes, and they always they always try to associate them with Donald Trump. Donald Trump's been a private citizen now for over a year. If he runs in 2024, he runs in 2024. Although he is actively going to city and city to campaign, but he's a multi-billionaire.
He did just recently say, do you see that clip of him playing golf?
No.
Yeah, he's got a clip of him playing golf where someone when he was getting ready to tee up, was commenting, was narrating, said, all right, the 45th president on the tee, and Donald turns to the camera and says 45th and 47th. So it's...
Yeah, well,
but he may be playing because Donald Trump is like that, so he could be trolling people with that. But I think the big thing on that is, the one thing I like to say because they did, that channel tried to do that to me too, tried to bring me into that. And the thing I pointed out is, I'm not running against Donald Trump. I'm running in Congress. There's almost nothing that Donald Trump had control over and would do that is the same as to what I'm doing in Congress. And that's the other thing I like to talk to people about when I travel around. It's I'll answer any question you want. I stay at events until they're kicking us out because I'll answer any question. I'm not afraid of a single question, as long as it's within the purview of either my past, related to, obviously that matters, or what I can do in effect as a congressman. I am not going to sit there and defend or tear apart or anything any other candidates or political levels. That's not my area. I'm here running for Congress because of the things I can do here. If I was running for president, I'd reference the president.
Well, exactly. And my point is, I noticed a lady running in, not your race, but in District 1. A lady who's very well versed in politics, where they try that to you in lockstep with Donald Trump. And she says, I'm here to run basically against the things of Joe Biden the past year or so. And that's a heck of a lot more important and bringing that to the forefront than what Donald Trump may or may not do 2 years from now.
Well, even when that interview was done with me, things have changed since then. Because my answer would have been a little different then. Because if things were as crazy then as they are now, as far as the Democrats and the trying to stop our First Amendment rights and just everything they're doing with that, with the CRT push and going after parents as terrorists when they go to the schools. And boy, that's a scary thing. Because I was one of those parents that were active.
Yeah.
And I would have been one of those. That personally terrifies me because I was an active parent. So therefore, I would have been, if my kids were younger, I would be one of those people being labeled a terrorist. A terrorist. I've got veteran friends that have kids in schools that came to me when I was at an event.
Yeah.
And with a trembling voice, they were so angry that they had been called a terrorist. And that matters. That matters. Well, I apologize. I missed when you had said about the lady from China running. One issue I have with that is I understand if you move to some place and you realize there's no one running, there's no way you're going to not let this side be represented. I get that.
Yeah.
Heck, I did that when I went to California. I saw no one running, so I ran. Now I went to California to kind of get my bones and actually learn the political system, to come back here and help, to get, to meet people, to really get involved. Now, I think that's different than, like, for example, she ran over in Colorado.
Correct.
Couldn't win in that purple state,
And she ran as a libertarian.
Right.
Has any libertarian won a statewide or a congressional?
That's actually where I was going.
Oh,
And then
okay.
she comes here, and what is she running as?
As a Republican.
Why not a libertarian? We've had libertarians on the ticket.
That's true.
There are a number of times when you look back at the race, the libertarian, but they didn't get big numbers. So that, to me, a lawyer that makes the choices she has made so far, looks to me like it's someone who wants a career. Now, I don't know her. I don't know her mind. I'm not trying to say that is fact. But 1 and 1 equals 2.
Yeah.
Just like another one running. Bob Burns
Okay.
is from a political family. Great. That means he's got knowledge. But he's from a family that's a pharmaceutical owning company. Now, he is I've actually spoken with him. He's not an unpleasant man. But do we really now, especially this time in our country, want to elect someone on the conservative ticket especially, that is a hand-picked lobbyist for the pharmaceutical companies? I mean, do we really believe that the son of a pharmaceutical owning family that came into our state and immediately started building a repertoire of political positions at lower levels, and then runs, matter of fact, in 2018, I believe it was, he, in his announcement to the Concord Monitor, he actually said that the reason he was running, when asked, was there was no one with any good name recognition running in this race, so it's a good time for him to run. You look at his background, and I'm not taking his background from me researching. I was at a Coos County event where he said these things. So this isn't my information. This is literally only stuff he said. You take that along with that statement, I'm sorry, that adds up. That adds up to someone who wants power. And do we really believe that someone in a lifelong family of pharmaceutical companies that with the kind of money that they would possess is going to give that all up to run for Congress at a time right now? No, pharmaceutical is a big thing. Another thing about that, when asked a question about the pharmaceutical industry in Coos, he was asked, what do you think of the mandates? And his hesitation was telling, and then his first beginning of the answer was talking about the validity of the shots. Well, we understand that. No one questioned the validity. The question was, what do you think about mandates? And it took him a while to get around to that. He had to be actually pushed towards answering. That's not a good sign. I'm someone that, if you ask me what I believe, I'm going to tell you.
Yeah.
If you disagree, I'll explain to you why. And that's just the way it is. But I'm not going to curve what I've got to say for any different group.
Yeah.
And that just seems like what's happening with a lot of these candidates. They're getting in it for the wrong reasons.
Yeah.
I think, and it should be about service. It really should.
Okay, so before we move on, I just want to say that as far as like Channel 9, WMUR TV, asking questions and trying to pit Republican candidates into, talking about, you're walking lockstep with Donald Trump. I hope the Channel 9 asks the same questions to Annie Kuster, especially her ratings, her approval ratings are less than like 30% or 40%.
Yes, down
so
below 40.
She probably got sucked down by being with Joe Biden and Kamala Harris.
Well, she got sucked down because of her voting. If you look at her record, she's been following lockstep with Nancy Pelosi. I mean, it is, you just look at this at Ballotia, I think it is, one website. They consolidate things. They give you basically an outline of their overall stance.
Ballotia.
By basically breaking down the votes and showing you the ones that kind of show you the way they think. She votes lockstep with Nancy Pelosi and against the American people every step of the way. And one big thing, she talks all the time, and on her website it's very prominent about how she is all about helping the children in New Hampshire, and she's the drug epidemic and all that. But she votes to keep the border wall closed down because she actually voted to stop building the wall. And we know there's zero question about the fact that that wall being stopped is what is causing this drug problem. Now, that's very personal to me. Like I said, I coached for over 30 seasons, baseball, basketball, and football. My oldest son, has multiple friends that have died. I've got 3 people that I've coached, 3 young boys that I coached. And I know they're not boys when they died, but they were boys when I remember them.
Yeah.
And they died from overdoses. One, it wasn't something you should have been able to overdose on. They don't tell you everything, so therefore my belief is it was fentanyl. But, and that's terrifying. And you've got a seated U.S. Congress. She's been there for, 4 terms now?
At least.
Running for the 4th? And she talks about how she cares about the children. This epidemic that killed these children was 4 or 5 years ago. This happened already.
Yeah.
I decided then when the very first time my son came to me with tears talking about, did you hear about? It tore me up, and I'm like, no, I'm doing the right thing. I guess I'm just going to have to stay with this because someone's got to fight for these kids. And now, when you read these people's bios, the Democrats' bios, they all want to talk about, helping the kids and this and that. You are not helping the kids. You're not helping the economy. All the things she talks about she wants to help, leaving the border open is doing the exact opposite. And on top of that, when you talk about helping bring industry back, and I was over in California for 4 years while my son was in college. While standing on the sidelines with other parents that were at that college, I came back to New Hampshire with at least 5 to 10 businesses that I know I can contact to potentially show them why New Hampshire is a better alternative for them. That's just because I talked and because I knew I want to help New Hampshire. I'm like that, and so how can she say that she's looking to help New Hampshire when she hasn't brought a single factory back to New Hampshire? She's allowed jobs to ship out. I'm sorry, bringing a boutique, bringing, barbershops, that's great. I love a barber. I need a trim. I need a barber. But, matter of fact, my nephew's a barber. But the thing is, we need factories. We need sustainable jobs. They're out here building all kinds of homes for elderly and for low income. So they're diluting our communities with people that need help from the government, but not putting jobs in so they can ever get away from that. So all you're doing is you're putting houses up that are going to eventually be slum areas because of the poor nature of the incomes. Well, the ones, and I've got ready right now, and if anyone out there would love to get involved in an industry that will make New Hampshire the #1 in this industry, come to me. I've got all the contacts already set up. Masks, PPE masks, we needed that. Over 80% were made in China. As a private citizen, I made the conversations and contacts to find out what it would take to actually get a factory set up back here in New Hampshire. So why hasn't our seated Congresswoman do that? The only thing I'm waiting on is an investor. I've got everything lined up. With a $500,000 investment, I could have a factory that is within a few years, the #1 producer of PPE in the United States of America. That changes New Hampshire's outlook. We could build a factory in the moment that one's bigger, because PPE is used by the millions even once we go back to normal, because the hospitals need it. And do we really believe that with the options they have and what we've seen in the system, that if you had an American-made mask product, that every American hospital wouldn't want to go there because the supply chain is easier. They don't have to come from overseas. It's right in the country. And in New Hampshire, we can truck it across or we can ship it directly from here to everywhere else. New Hampshire is a prime location to have that type of industry. Why isn't she doing that?
Yeah.
I worked factories. When I first came out of high school, I worked construction and then factories, sometimes both. And there's no factories now. The factory, BD Electric, that some of my family members literally raised their families on. One of my aunts worked there till she retired. They closed it down. It was one of the only places to work inside the city of Pennacook. So they decimated it, and right across the street from it, they're putting in dozens and dozens of low-income housing, creating slums right across from a factory that they shut down. It makes no sense. So to say that you're trying to help the New Hampshire economy with jobs and with all this, that's just lies. And that's what we need to call it. And I don't think it's impolite to tell the truth. And the truth is they're lying.
Yeah.
And any Republican, conservative Republican, anyone who's not willing to call someone out when it is an obvious lie and call it that, well, then you're playing games. If you're not willing to use that type of language, why? Are you trying to curry favor? Well, my belief is the only favor I need to curry is with the people of New Hampshire, because when I go and I'm in that cloakroom and I'm actually talking straight talk to another Republican, he can't get me unelected. The chair can't get me unelected. The Democrats can't get me unelected. The only one to get me unelected is the people that I ran for. And if I'm doing that job for them, they're going to love what I do, because if I need to make a decision that is even slightly different than they believed I would come back here and explain to them exactly why I had to do that, which is more important than anything. Most people I talk to say they understand the nature of compromise, but they don't ever explain it. They don't ever tell you why. It feels like they've disappointed you, they've deserted you, they've stabbed you in the back. Well, if you know you had to make that decision, like for example, say the governor had to veto something because the Democrats put something in that he wouldn't allow. Why are you letting your party beat you up for vetoing that? Get in front of some cameras, get in front of some meetings, and tell them exactly why you had to do that. But our politicians believe that they're above us to a point where they don't have to explain to the peons anymore. Well, as a leader, I believe that's wrong. And that's the leadership that I got when I was in the military. Was I had leaders that believed the more you inform people of what they're doing and why they're doing it, the more passionate they're going to be about doing it, the more loyal they're going to be to doing it. And I think that spreads across everywhere.
Yeah. So hopefully, like Channel 9, the union leader, and the other media powers to be around New Hampshire and New England will hold Ann Kuster, associate her with like Nancy Pelosi and Joe Biden, just like they do all the Republican congressional candidates to private citizen Donald Trump.
Yeah.
That's the least they could do, hopefully, if they were responsible media. One thing I want to bring up, I noticed, one thing, you've got a great website, DeanPoirier4Congress.com. I suggest everybody watching this go to it, because there's a lot of issues you got on there that we're not going to cover on this show.
I actually built that myself.
Oh, okay, there you go. And you have a tattoo on your arm about the Second Amendment. Now, you've got to be passionate about that.
Amen.
Because, I know guys who've had like wives and girlfriends.
I will defend the Second Amendment.
I don't know if they can get that on camera. A close-up.
I will defend the Second Amendment.
And if you try taking that off, it's going to hurt like a son of a gun.
I never would.
You never would.
I'm one of those people that believes in the tattoos on your body are a story of your life. I've got 8 different patriotic tattoos, either patriotic sayings or flags. I've got, and I put them in places, the more they hurt, the more important they are. That's why the American flag with born American, patriot by choice. American by birth, patriot by choice is on a flag on my ribs, one of the more painful places you can get it, because it matters to me. This country is so important to me that when I was putting those there, I wanted the pain. because I wanted to prove to myself. I don't know. It's kind of weird. You know, us who do tattoos, sometimes we have weird ways of doing that. But me, it's, you know, it's kind of the story of my life. And that's why this was so important. And I can't even get into too much detail about my sons because unfortunately the political world is so bad. This breaks my heart, but my sons have asked me not to identify them because they don't want to be, you know, harassed. But my oldest son is actually the one who put this on my arm. So this is even more important to me.
Oh, okay.
And I've got my youngest son's school mascot for his college on my back shoulder, which I put on. I showed up at the college with it on my shoulder already because I'm in full support of my boys, and it's just a way. Like I said, it's a story about my body.
So with all the stuff like in the major cities, major U.S. cities, with like gun violence and looting and crimes, carjackings, all that kind of neat stuff, and it's uncontrollable. And if they arrest you, you get off on misdemeanor because they're bad DAs.
I've got a son in New York, so it's scary to me.
Wow. So when you're talking about, and it seems like what the liberals are saying is take all the guns away and you won't have that problem anymore.
Right, except that the reality is there will always be a black market for everything. Unless we go to a complete totalitarian system where they lock everything down, you have the criminal element that can access stuff. You know, they can get guns from Mexico. You can get guns. You can create them for that matter. I mean, you've got gunsmiths. You can tell me you wouldn't have people, if they tried to take them all away, that you wouldn't have some criminal who knew how to make guns that would be making them and selling them for top dollar, which would mean that they'd have to do even more crime to afford it, which would actually cause the crime to go up instead of go down, because that's what they don't realize. It's a supply and demand thing. If you eliminate all legal guns, first off, you take our ability to protect ourselves away, and then you turn that black market gun market into an even more valuable proposition. So therefore, they make more money, they charge more money, they need more crimes to afford it. It's a backwards way of thinking.
So there's no big push yet by the Biden administration, at least not that I know of, that are confiscating guns from anybody.
Well, I believe the only reason that that's not on the top of their lips right now is because they're too busy doing the other stuff. Now, but you say they're not going directly after it, but they're censoring us and restricting us in such a way that they're setting up the path so that they can then create an environment where, we have to take those for this reason, and because everything's blacked out and no one's getting the accurate information, enough Americans go, that must be really bad. Because I firmly believe that some of the people that I've been listening to on Fox and stuff are right. I believe that the way they've been acting during this pandemic is an attempt to see how far they can push us so that they can do it again. And all this stuff is eventually going to come for our weapons because, I know it's been attributed, and it may not actually be to the Chinese leader, but the Japanese leader, but the comment of we can't attack American soil because there's a gun behind every blade of grass, that's pretty close to right. And what is the one thing stopping any totalitarian government from taking over? People having the ability to defend themselves. It's the only thing. Now, people would say, well, you can't defend yourselves against the military. They've got bigger weapons. Yes, that is true. But do you believe that American citizens are going to turn those mega weapons on Americans with guns protecting themselves? I don't believe that. I don't believe our military members would go that far. So therefore, the right to stand up and bear arms to protect your rights, it is enough to protect against the military because you forced them to make that decision. Now, if we go to the point and then the military actually attacks the American people, then unfortunately Obama did too good of a job of putting all his disgusting generals in that are ruining our military. But I don't believe it's that way so far. I don't believe it's that way already. I believe there's enough people that are just keeping their mouths shut, that once we get back in control, take the House and Senate back and get some of these changes out, I believe we're going to see some big changes back to the way it was.
So are you worried about people referring to you as a racist or white supremacist?
No. Well, two reasons. One,
Okay.
I don't care what people say.
Yeah.
And two, anyone that wants to do a little research on me can see that my adult life has either been traveling with the circus, which you can't get more multicultural than that.
Yeah.
Military, not even as multicultural as the circus, but close. And then coaching youth sports, which in every community in America, the biggest mix of every group that's in that town is on the sports fields. And I coach baseball, basketball, and football, so not soccer, but everything else. So therefore, my entire existence spits in the face of that comment. And I'm also, like Dan Crenshaw mentioned when I spoke to him, you just got to ignore it.
Yeah.
Because eventually it goes away. Because I asked him straight out at an event he was at, I'm like, wow, it doesn't seem to bother you. I said, that's one thing with me. It gets under my skin when someone says something that's a lie about me. And he's like, you just got to ignore that. Because that's what they're going to do. They're just trying to get under your skin. He says, it took a little while. He says, but you just got to ignore it. They're not worth you getting upset for. And I must admit, that conversation with him did kind of ease my mind a little, because he's right. You just got to ignore it, and they're going to call you it.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, they're going to call you it. And I was in California, like I said, working, and I got this whole Colonel Sanders thing going on here.
Yeah.
So yeah, I got called a racist. I got called a homophobe and all that. Now, they have a little harder time doing that when I'm at events, and the kind of people that are my friends and are all over me, they certainly couldn't take any pictures and make that case, so they can say what they want to say.
Ah, okay. To the best of your knowledge, is there any school systems in New Hampshire that teach critical race theory?
Well,
or is that in other parts?
So that we don't get this canceled off the internet when it goes up.
Okay.
No, I do understand that in the state of New Hampshire, there's nothing labeled as CRT being taught in the schools. Because technically CRT is a college-level course that's taught in colleges. But the framework, which CRT is a framework that works within as to how you think about everything. And it is absolutely in our schools. I go to county meetings. I've been in county meetings in Coos and all the way to Merrimack County, in an event I went down in Nashua. And they're all talking about the same thing. You still have that stuff happening there. And that's another reason I mentioned that getting someone like myself who's willing to fight is important, because the teachers union openly said, we're going to have our teachers teach it anyways, and then we'll defend them. They openly said that. Well, they're trying to find ways, and like I say, the framework is being used. Well, we need to stop that. And the one way to help that is if our federal reps take their gravitas and help lend it to the states. Because for example, if I were to come down and hold a big event against critical race theory and against all that stuff, I can use the gravitas of my office to raise a bunch of money and awareness to help actually do something about it. Now, it's a little disgusting to me, actually, when you look at Annie Kuster's background, where she comes from, so involved with the college, and the college is actually one of her supporters. And right now in those schools, you've got this type of, so where does Annie Kuster stand on the whole CRT thing? She's actually supported by a college that has those programs in it. So if I were to take money from somewhere that I know is running that stuff, how could I say I'm against it? Now, she hasn't come out against it. None of the Democrats have. But she couldn't if she wanted to.
How do you feel about, one thing I want to mention, there was a thing recently, well, I guess Fox News had it, where like these illegal immigrants were being flown to wherever they want to in the United States. To the best of your knowledge, is New Hampshire harboring any of those illegal aliens?
That is a very good question. That's something I've actually been checking on to try and find out, because I've been paying attention to that real close. And let me give you one quick reason why. That dilutes our votes. And one reason that's so important to me is my son's mother is from Germany. I met her when I was over there. She came over here. She gave up her German citizenship because, now this is before Donald Trump,
Okay.
She gave up her German citizenship because she said she wanted to keep America as great it has always been, and she wanted to vote to do that for her children. So she became an American citizen and a citizen of New Hampshire. And now her vote is diluted. Someone who loved this country so much that she gave up the citizenship of where she's from. And now her vote doesn't count because we've got illegals streaming in everywhere.
Yeah.
And they're coming in everywhere. Now, are they staying in New Hampshire? I don't know. Yeah. But I do know that when I was flying one time, that some of those individuals with packets being led onto planes before everyone else were going out of Boston. So where were they going? Where were they? I saw them coming off there too. I saw one plane unload where half the passengers came off with this one group into Boston. You can't tell me they're not going into New Hampshire.
Incredible. So, so how do you? If you were elected to Congress, would you like to see Dr. Anthony Fauci continue as the CDC director and running a COVID operation?
If by the time I get there, it has not already been done, one of my first orders of business, and I promise you right now, one of my first orders of business is I'm going to write legislation to do an investigation, to initiate an investigation to go after Fauci. Because not only is what he's been doing with the lockdowns and the lying back and forth, is that wrong? We now know that he was the reason that the American people put money into China to create this virus. Now, was it done on purpose? No, not from our end. It wasn't done on purpose as far as the virus getting out. But that gain of function work was. Now, even President Obama put a hold on that because it was so dangerous, and he went around President Obama and continued doing it. President Trump tried to stop it. He went around President Trump. So I cannot believe that there isn't some reason that we could be able to have him held responsible for what he's done. And that's it. That's not, okay, if punishment is required to hold him responsible, then call it punishment. But it's called holding people responsible for what they do. If I do something wrong and I break the law, I'm going to be held responsible. He should be held responsible.
Amen. Okay, one more quick question. We're running, but I think I can squeeze it in. President Biden. I mean, there've been a lot of talk about whether or not. Well, one thing Donald Trump did when he was during his term in office, he took what they call a competency test. I don't know. I think there's a special name for it. But anyway, he was given that and he aced it.
Yep.
No problem. Do you think that when you look at Biden, I think he's 78 now or something like that. And if he thinks about running for re-election, he'll be like 82 or something like that. Do you think that would you push to have a thing that people who are president over 70 should probably be required to take like a competency test every year?
Well,
cognitive test.
Yeah, cognitive test. I'm not sure if that is necessarily needed, but I do believe, unfortunately, it's all political as far as why President Trump took it. Because there was
I agree.
There was nothing that showed us he needed to.
I agree.
If we can get back to a place where a little bit of honesty rules, then the Democrats right now should be going, oh man, we need someone. I mean, they've got a vice president. Well, I know they don't care for her either, but my point is, no one should want a president that is making us look like he's making us look on the world stage. I have trouble watching him when they show clips of him talking. I literally recoil and sometimes have to turn it off. It hurts me inside that our country is being represented like that.
Amen.
And it's hurting us around the world. I mean, our enemies see him as weak. And that's going to get our men and women killed.
Yeah. Well, time flies when you're having fun, eh, Dean?
It does. It does.
My producer told me that we have, about a little more than 3 minutes left. Is there anything that we've talked about so far that you'd like to elaborate on, or something we haven't brought up that you'd like to bring up at this time?
Well, I guess one thing I would just like to reiterate is I just think it's important right now that we get someone who's willing to fight. And I know that's kind of a generic term, but like when I talk to people at events, example, if in the primary we've got 4 people running, I don't know them. I'm not going to say their level of conservativeness. But when you look at the totality of people's background and even how they're acting and talking right now, which is really important, because if you're not willing to talk truth on the air, then you're not going to talk truth behind doors, are you?
No.
Well, I think it's important that we have someone that is willing to fight, has a personality, demeanor for that, because right now in our country, the absolute last thing we need is, the term rhino is overused, and you don't have to be a rhino to be bad for the party.
That's
but
true,
if you're going there and you're too complacent to do anything, that doesn't do us any good. If you're going there for career purposes and you're going to just go along to get along, that doesn't do us any good. We need someone who's willing to go there, fight for the American people, and actually stand on principle.
Amen.
And I truly believe that, well, my veteran status gives me a little bit to do that. If people are upset with me, a lot of times they at least understand where I'm coming from because they understand my military status. So even sometimes when people are on the other side, they're willing to at least listen to what I've got to say long enough to understand that I'm reasonable, and then I get through. I'll give you a quick little example before we go. When I was over in California, I went to an impeach Trump rally in downtown LA, and I took the opportunity to go up into the Antifa crowd, 140 plus of them, and I went up in against the recommendation of our people because they were already being violent and spitting on people. And I went up there with my cameraman, and I got nothing but respect from them because they saw the hat. Now, this was a little while back, but they saw the veteran's hat, because this is my Army, but my other one's a veteran's hat, and they would stick their hand out and say, "Thank you for your service." And the moment that they did that, and well, I was polite to begin with. I was, "Excuse me," so they saw I wasn't being rude. They were polite. I was polite. It started a conversation. Within an hour, it dissipated the entire thing because conversations were allowed. And I just think that's what I bring to it, is because everyone knows someone from the military, so they can all understand where we're coming from.
Wow. And one more thing I'll mention, like I said earlier, go to his, if you've been blessed by this or you want to know more about Dean Poirier, go on Dean Poirier 4, the number 4, Congress.com. And there's a lot more issues and a lot more detail than we described here in this hour-long show.
Absolutely. That's Dean Poirier, Poirier, the number 4, Congress.com. And I hate to do this, but it does take money to win. So please go and donate now. And I promise I'm fighting for you.
Amen. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us, and join us next time for Frankly Speaking. Thank you very much.
The preceding program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.